Welcome back to CIA Declassified. San Francisco, September 1950. It's a city known for its atmosphere, its hills, and most of all, its fog. But for 6 days that September, the fog wasn't just moisture and salt air, it was a delivery system. We're looking at Operation Sea Spray. Imagine you're sitting at a wharf enjoying a sourdough bowl, watching the gray mist roll under the Golden Gate Bridge. You don't see the Navy minesweeper lurking just offshore. You don't see the specialized hoses spraying a massive invisible cloud of bacteria into the air. You just breathe in. The government wanted to know if a biological weapon could take out an American city. To find out, they turned 800,000 people into lab rats. The payload for Operation Sea Spray wasn't a lethal plague. At least that's what the government claimed. They used two types of bacteria, Serratia marcescens and Bacillus globigii. The Navy used Serratia marcescens because it produces a bright red pigment. This allowed scientists to track the drift of the cloud. They set up 43 sampling stations across the city to see how far the red mist would travel. The results, it covered the entire city and even reached the suburbs of the East Bay. A quote from a 1951 Army report. It was noted that a successful attack could be launched from the sea and that the city's unique meteorological conditions provided an ideal environment for the maximum dispersal of a biological agent. End quote. Shortly after the spraying, 11 patients at Stanford University Hospital developed rare, serious urinary tract infections. All 11 were found to be infected with that same bacteria that starts with an S. One man, Edward Nevin, a retired pipe fitter, died 3 weeks later when the bacteria reached his heart. The government never notified the hospital or the victims. The dosage was immense. Over the course of the week, the Navy released enough bacteria for every single person in San Francisco to inhale at least 5,000 particles. The simulated attack was, in terms of coverage, 100% effective. The bacteria didn't stay in the air. Samples taken days later showed the organisms had settled into the soil, the water, and even the internal ventilation systems of prominent government buildings. When the Nevin family eventually found out about the secret test in the 1970s and sued the government, the U.S. District Court ruled against them. The court stated that the government had sovereign immunity because the tests were a matter of national security. A quote, the testimony of Dr. Stephen Weitzman. The release of these agents into a civilian population, particularly one with elderly and infirm members, was an act of gross negligence that disregarded the fundamental principles of medical ethics. End quote. Operation Sea Spray was just the beginning. Between 1949 and 1969, the U.S. military conducted 239 secret open-air tests on the American public, ranging from the New York City subway system to the Florida coast. During the tests, the military used high-powered bellows and pressurized sprayers to ensure the bacteria bypassed the nose's natural filtration system. They wanted to ensure the particles reached the deepest parts of the human lungs to maximize the infective potential for their simulated pathogen. The Senate Subcommittee on Health and Scientific Research revealed in 1977 that the military chose the bacteria that starts with an S, specifically because they believed it was harmless. They completely ignored 1940s medical literature that already suggested the bacteria could cause opportunistic infections in vulnerable populations. A quote from Senator Richard Schweiker. The people of San Francisco were used as human guinea pigs for a biological experiment of which they had no knowledge and to which they gave no consent. It is a chilling example of the arrogance of power. End quote. Operation Sea Spray was so secret that even local law enforcement and public health officials were kept in the dark. If a massive outbreak had occurred, the city's emergency responders would have been treating a biological threat they didn't even know existed. The minesweeper used in the operation, the USS Terrell County, was fitted with massive tanks and a sophisticated pumping system designed to release the bacteria only when the wind direction was perfect to carry the cloud over the most populated areas of the city. The declassified files on Sea Spray are shocking, but what's still missing is even more terrifying. The heaviest redactions in the current files are located in the morbidity and immortality sections. Speculation among historians suggests that the government has data proving Edward Nevin wasn't the only casualty. The theory is that the redacted pages list dozens, perhaps hundreds, of anomalous respiratory illnesses that occurred in the Bay Area that autumn, which were never linked to the test in public records. Further speculation surrounds the second wave of redactions in the 1960s logs. There's a conspiracy theory that the Navy didn't just use simulants. Some believe the redacted pages describe the inclusion of a low-grade pathogen meant to test the local medical response time, essentially a live-fire biological drill that went far beyond what was ever admitted. There are whispers that the redactions in the coastal coordination files hide a partnership with private shipping companies. The speculation is that the agency didn't just use Navy ships but also modified commercial vessels to see if merchant ships could be used as covert delivery platforms by foreign adversaries. Conspiracy theorists often point to a missing set of files regarding long-term environmental impact. The speculation is that the bacteria used didn't die off as expected, but instead mutated in the unique San Francisco ecosystem, potentially contributing to the rise of antibiotic-resistant strains in the region today. Finally, some speculate that the redactions hide the target selection criteria. Why San Francisco? The theory is that the agency chose the city not just for the fog, but because they wanted to see how the agent would spread in a high-density, politically active population, using the city as a demographic laboratory. There is significant speculation that the redacted files contain follow-up surveillance logs. Some believe the CIA followed the families of the Stanford patients for decades to see if the bacteria caused long-term genetic or autoimmune issues, essentially continuing the experiment without the subject's knowledge. A persistent conspiracy theory suggests that the redactions in the project cost section hide a massive payout to a pharmaceutical company. The speculation is that the bacteria used were tagged with a specific chemical marker that the agency was testing for a private contractor interested in urban tracking technology. Some researchers speculate that the red mist wasn't just that bacteria that starts with an S. The theory is that the redacted logs describe secondary aerosol additives, chemicals designed to make the bacteria stick to surfaces longer or resist UV degradation, effectively turning a simple bacteria into a persistent military-grade agent. Was Operation Sea Spray a success? From a cold military science perspective, it was a resounding success. It proved that a single ship could effectively incapacitate an entire American metropolis without firing a single shot. It changed the way the U.S. viewed its own coastal vulnerabilities. A quote that's from a declassified Navy summary. The San Francisco tests demonstrate that our cities are almost entirely defenseless against a covert biological aerosol attack. The natural climate of our western seaboard is our greatest liability. End quote. The test was so successful that it led directly to the creation of the Special Operations Division at Fort Detrick, which focused on vulnerability studies in major U.S. cities throughout the Cold War. The data from Sea Spray was used to justify a massive increase in funding for biodefense sensors. By the 1960s, the agency had developed automatic pathogen detectors that were secretly installed in the ventilation systems of the U.S. Capitol and the White House, all based on the red mist data. A quote from Rear Admiral Bennett: "We learned more in those 6 days in San Francisco than we could have learned in 10 years of laboratory simulations. It was a terrifying success that proved we were wide open to a quiet death." End quote. Operation Sea Spray wasn't just about bacteria, it was a master class in invisible warfare. As far as operational breakthroughs go, aerosol dispersal hoses. The Navy developed high-pressure stealth nozzles that could create a fine mist that remained suspended in the air for hours, mimicking natural fog. Urban drift modeling. The CIA and Navy created the first accurate mathematical models of how air flows between skyscrapers and through city canyons, information that is still used today for emergency planning. Covert sampling networks. The agency perfected the incognito sensor, disguising biological collection devices as ordinary trash cans or rooftop vents to monitor air quality without alerting the public. Operation Sea Spray remains a dark reminder of what happens when national security collides with public safety. The next time you see the fog rolling into the bay, you might find yourself holding your breath, just for a second. Thanks for listening to CIA Declassified. Next time, we look at the agency's most powerful weapon, the black marker. We examine the final decree. How do you tell the truth while hiding everything? We'll look at the agency's declassified manual on the art of sanitization. We'll explore the specific rules for what gets the black bar, from sources and methods to the GLOMAR response. We'll learn the secrets of how the government makes sure you only see what they want you to see. Join us for the art of the ink. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.